There are folks in Ottawa right now who bought a townhouse 4 or 5 years ago, stretched for every dollar they had to get into the market, and today they can't sell, can't rent, and they're running out of time, frankly, to figure out what to do with the place. They did everything right, and they still ended up trapped. If you bought a townhouse in Ottawa between 2020 and 2022, or you're thinking about buying one now, I want to show you exactly how this happens because it's way more common than you might think. I was speaking with a couple a little while ago who had bought a townhouse condo in, let's just say, the east end of Ottawa. They bought in 2021 when the market was on fire. They stretched to get in, locked in a fixed rate at the historical low rates that we had, and for a while, it felt like the best decision that they'd ever made. They're now up for their 5-year term. It came up for renewal, and suddenly keeping it, selling it, and renting it were all bad options. Every direction they looked, the math just didn't work for them. Now, this particular unit was a condo townhouse, and this was a common entry point in 2021. A lot of the freehold townhouses and detached properties were just out of reach for people at that time because the prices were so high. And in neighborhoods like Canada, Orleans, Barhaven, young couples were stretching and getting into bidding wars on a regular basis, often competing against 5 to 15 other offers, putting down the minimum down payment and locking in rates in the low twos. Buy now or get priced out forever was basically what they were hearing. Then the Bank of Canada raised the interest rates super quickly. Those 5-year fixed terms from 2021 are coming up for renewal now. And the rate people are renewing at isn't 2% anymore. It's closer to 4 and maybe higher in some cases. Payments are jumping by hundreds of dollars per month on a household that was already maxed out in some cases. And that increase doesn't even take into consideration things like condo fees, property taxes, utilities, all costs that could have risen in the same time period. That's the first part of the trap, is people who can barely afford to keep these places. That runaway growth that everybody was expecting at that time never really came. Well, it kind of came, actually. It came in up till early 2022, and then it went down sharply when the Bank of Canada raised interest rates. It sounds like a wash until you remember selling isn't free. You're paying commissions, legal fees, moving costs, potentially a mortgage break penalty depending on where your mortgage is. You could be looking at $25,000 or more in costs just to get out of a property that you don't have much equity in. You could walk away with nothing, or worse, you could owe money and have to pay for the privilege of getting out of the property. That's the second part of the trap. You can't afford to sell without taking a loss that you can't really afford. And option number 3 is you could rent it. Ottawa's rental market is strong, is what people keep hearing, and that's true. I'll just become a landlord, I'll cover the mortgage, and kind of wait it out until the prices go up. A 3-bedroom condo townhouse in a similar area to where these people bought that I'm talking about rents for roughly $2,000 to $3,000, but the mortgage at the new rate, plus $400 in condo fees, plus utilities, plus insurance, you're in for over $3,000 a month on this place in carrying costs. So that's a gap of $800 to $900 out of your pocket each month for being a landlord. And that doesn't even take into consideration things like tenants missing their payments, something breaking in the house. So renting doesn't really solve the problem either. This isn't a story about bad decisions. It's bad timing meeting minimum margin. You bought at the top of your budget, top of the market, bottom of the interest rates, and no room for anything to go wrong. And something almost always goes wrong over a long enough time period. So if this is you, this is what I would recommend. Some advice that I would give my clients if they were in this situation. Number 1 is get a market valuation. Not what you paid, a proper CMA from an agent who knows your particular neighborhood. They can help you make a plan and give you an idea of where you stand. Number 2 is if you can absorb the shock, renew into a shorter mortgage term, like a 2 or 3 year fixed rate, keeps you in the game, and rates may come down in that time period. It definitely doesn't look like they're going to go up sharply. Every month you hold on, you're also paying down that principal, giving you more and more equity for if you do eventually need to sell. Option number 3 is you could rent a room, not the entire unit, just one bedroom. It can be a pain to get used to if you're used to having your own space, but an extra $800 or $1,000 a month without the added complexity of becoming a landlord can make a huge difference with that renewal shock. This is what I did in the first place that I owned by myself, and it was difficult to get used to, but it did make a big difference in the long term. Number 4, if you genuinely cannot carry the mortgage, you might have no choice but to sell and accept the loss. A break-even exit, or even an exit where you have to pay a little bit, is better than the consequences of defaulting. Sometimes the best financial decision is the one that just stops the financial bleeding. The worst option would be to ignore the renewal that's coming up and just hoping that it works out. That's how people end up in a power of sales situation. And if you paid attention to this channel at all, you'll know that power of sales can result in very, very low sales prices in some cases. If you are in this situation, you're definitely not alone. This is happening across Ottawa right now, and I can tell you the worst thing you can do is just pretend that the numbers aren't what they are. The market is not broken, but it is punishing people who bought with no margin of error. So don't be the next one to fall into that trap. If you're dealing with any of this, please don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything I can do to help. Also, I would recommend watching the next video if you have the time. It breaks down kind of where that renewal shock is coming from and the mechanics behind it. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch. Have a wonderful rest of your day and take care.